Hello, I am Blarchar and I beat Pokemon Infinite Fusion using only Poison-type Pokemon. Skip to the time shown on screen now if you just want to get to the run. If you're curious about what Pokemon Infinite Fusion is, check the description below. Now, before I begin, I want to thank you for your patience with how long it took this video to come out. I know I said in the past to not expect any sort of schedule for this channel, but that doesn't mean I don't feel bad about spending almost 3 weeks procrastinating. I started a new job too, so that definitely didn't help. Anyway, it's here now, so let's just get into it. For this run, I followed some advice from the comments. I downloaded an older version of the game so that I can randomize every trainer without the game crashing. That means every gym will have its own type and the rival will have a new team every run. Speaking of my rival, I named him Jackson after a fat cat that I know. I picked Bulbasaur as my starter. Although it is part Poison type, I won't be able to use its Poison half in any fusions because all the starter Pokemon provide only their primary type, so all Bulbasaur fusions are Grass type. Anyway, I lose to Jackson's Squirtmander and head on out. I have all wild Pokemon randomized, so the first Poison type I find is a Zubat just north of Viridian City. I catch it and fuse it with Bulbasaur to make a cute looking Zoosaur. In Viridian Forest, I also found a Budew and a Spinarak. I fuse Budew with Togepi and get an adorable Togedue, and Spinarak gets fused with Slugma to make Slugrak. I also found a Weedle and fused that with a Litwick, and it seems that Litwick always makes really good looking fusions. I guess melting wax can fit on pretty much any Pokemon body type. To prove my point, Litdull evolves into Latuna, and then shortly after into Litdrill, all of which look great. I finally get to Pewter City and head to the gym to take on Brock. He specializes in Ice-type Pokemon, and I use Litdrill and Slugrak, since they both have fire moves. His funny-looking Swinub-Bidoof fusion goes down in a couple fire spins, but Swiler is a bit bulkier. Thankfully, a combination of Confusion, Poison, and Fire Spin whittle it down in no time, earning me the Boulder Badge. I find and catch an Ekans in Mount Moon, as well as a female Nidoran. I fuse a Squirtle I found with this Nidoran, and both forms fused look pretty cursed. They'll evolve soon anyway, so it's not too important. I also fused the Ekans with a Chikorita, and I really like the decaying leaf on Akrita's head. It's a nice design choice. The Squirtran evolves both of its halves, and the Warina that results of it is much better than either of the first forms. I also evolved both halves of Akrita, and the Arleaf is actually really cool. I continue to take on Misty's gym in Cerulean, and this time she's using Ground-type Pokemon, which could be dangerous for my Poison types. I bring in Warina and Arleaf because they're just the two bulkiest Pokemon I have. Misty's Cute falls in just a couple bubble attacks, but her Diglett comes out to outspeed and one-shot with Bulldoze thanks to Banette and Diglett's decent attack stats. For some reason, Misty uses two other moves that aren't as good, and I'm able to get off a Magical Leaf with Arleaf to one-shot Diglett. The Cascade Badge is mine, I guess. I fight Jackson by Nugget Bridge, and he's got a cute little Quagnub. Quagsire on its own is cute, so I bet most fusions with it are the same. It's kind of tough though and it outlasts Warina. Arleaf is able to one-shot with Magical Leaf, however, and his Squirtmeleon comes out. A couple Magical Leaves do the job, and I'm just really not a fan of his Licky Knot. Thankfully, Arleaf puts it out of its misery with a solid crunch. Smearmer, however, is a really nice sprite, just like all the other Smeargle fusions. It also falls to just a couple crunches. After the battle, my Togelia evolves, and it's a great one. Nothing else really happens between now and the rival battle on the SSN, so I'll skip straight to the highlights from that. Jackson has a beautiful fusion of Omastar and Wobbuffet. I love its starry cape it has. This must be a reference to something I don't know. Otherwise, the rest of his team is pretty boring. Moving on. Before the next gym, my Slugrak evolves into Slugdose, and it has no business looking this good. Zoosaur also evolves, but I don't really have to worry about this one looking too good. Anyway, moving on to Lieutenant Surge, who now uses Ghost Pokemon. I like how his pre-battle text actually changes to fit his Ghost typing now, saying that his Ghost Pokemon haunted his enemies in the war, instead of shocking them or whatever he normally says. Very cool. He's got a very hard to pronounce Duskma, which he switches out for some reason into this lovable little Happet. After it falls to some bites, he sends Duskma out again, and then after another few bites he switches again. This time into a menacing looking Bastigregus, and at least this one earns its badass but confusing looking name. It's able to shrug off hits easily, and it takes me a minute to realize I should just Leech Seed it. It takes out my Goldsaur, and I'm able to switch into Warina to hit it with some special moves. After it falls, it's not too hard to finish off Duskma, earning me my Thunder Badge. I'm able to catch a Bellsprout to add to my poisonous collection, and on my way through Rock Tunnel, I stop by the old man who normally gives away weapons to children. He gives me a Grimer, and although I already have one, it makes me think, hasn't he given me a Pokemon exactly of the type I need for the playthrough almost every time? I'm too lazy to go back and check, but I feel like he's been very helpful. Jackson in the Pokemon Tower brings a new team again, this time with a Pucaleon, a Mega Blaziken, which I'm pretty sure you just get by fusing Blaziken with another Blaziken, his normal Warmeleon, making me realize I should try to randomize the starter Pokemon as well again. And finally a funny looking Belmeleon. I don't know how it hasn't already burned itself to a crisp. Eventually my Golsar evolves and loses its custom sprite, so I unfuse it. The only other Pokemon I see with a custom fusion sprite is Mime Jr., and it doesn't look half bad. I evolve it into Golmime, and it's actually looking pretty good now. Certainly less cursed than Mr. Mime or Golbat on their own. I also give shiny stones to both halves of Togelia to evolve it into Togeraid, which is one of my favorite custom sprites so far. I make my way through the Celadon sewers again with my girlfriend Erika, who recently moved in with me. We make it to Giovanni, who has barged in again on our private date, so I challenge him. He's got a Chicofeon, which, while cute, looks very weak, so I get 2 Toxic Spikes set up. A couple hexes later and it's KO'd. Gyaraper, on the other hand, is the reincarnation of the devil himself, so I think I've got a fight on my hands. It knocks out Litdrill and I send in Warina, who also falls to 1 move. Togeraid tries to attack, but also falls in 1 hit. The devil himself finally falls to poison damage, so I think I'm safe now. Slugdose versus his Ivyler seems like a bad spot for me, but I'm able to knock it out. Erika suggests we move to the Sinnoh region to get away from her crazy ex, and I'm all for it. Just gotta beat the Elite Four first. Anyway, I'm searching for something to fuse with this Nidorino I found, and I guess Drowsy is what I chose because Erika's gym is fighting type this run. I also fused Grimer with Solosis, which I immediately evolve into Duomer. I also evolved my Warina into Warqueen, and she's majestic. Or maybe goofy is the right word? Yeah. Hypno and Nidoking don't work out, so I have to find something else to fuse it with. I go out and catch a Pidgeotto since I remember the rival using this fusion in the past few runs I've done, and Nidoto returns but on my side now. Now with 3 Pokemon of the Psychic, Fairy, and Flying varieties, I take on Erika. She leads with a very threatening Steechoke, which I whittle down with Air Cutters before getting slammed once and running away to Duomer. Psyshocks seem to do the job, but then Psycross comes out. This thing is crazy tough. I switch into Nidoto, and luckily Psycross goes for Pin Missile, letting me get some attacking moves in. It goes down and Erika sends in Golem. Thankfully one Psyshock takes it out, and I get to leave with my Rainbow Badge. While climbing the Pokemon Tower, I catch a Venonat, and later on in the Safari Zone I get a Coughing. 2 more for the Poison Pile. While making my way through the Fuchsia Gym, I finally realized my Warqueen was in fact Water Ground type, not Water Poison. Oops! I head back to reverse the fusion, which thankfully is a custom sprite and is also part poison type, although I don't like the sprite as much as before. While in the gym, however, it evolves into Nidotoys, which thankfully is a return to greatness. Not sure where the purple belly came from, however. Koga uses electric type Pokemon here, so I'm fusing a Weezing with Marowak to make an amazing looking Weewack, Venomoth with Rhyhorn to make Rhymoth, which looks far too menacing for what it's made out of, and Vileplume with Dugtrio, making a great Dugplume. I can't find any ground types that will fuse with Victreebel to make a poison fusion, so I fuse it with Snorlax instead, and I would not approach this Snorbell at any point. It looks like it'll just kill me at any time. Koga leads with Pikator, and I like the electric palm fronds. Some of these custom sprite creators are so creative. One drill run from Rhymoth takes it out, however, and Koga's Digchew almost one-shots me, but is taken out in 1 hit as well. Romance is next out, and I love this fusion sprite, and I realize its scary offensive potential. It knocks out Rhymoth, and I send in Dugplume, who falls to a single critical hit Zen Headbutt. Not that it would have survived anyway. Next in is Weewack, and I find out Romance has Levitate. I'm able to whittle it down with Sludge Bombs as it, for some reason, is holding a black sludge which also damages it while it knocks my Pokemon out. I think the randomizer changes the Pokemon on a trainer's team, but not its held item. Snorbell is able to come out and survive 1 more attack before Romance faints to its own poison. Electowhack is last out, and I have to resort to healing Snorbell once as I miss 4 sleep powders in a row, which is a 0.3% chance of happening. Surely you can forgive me this one time. A couple Leaf Tornadoes finishes it off, giving me the Soul Badge. Now I run into a different event that doesn't happen in newer versions of the game. Jackson ambushes me outside the Fuchsia Pokemon Center and I have to fight him. He sends out a plain old Starfish, Warzord, King Mortar, Mizmalu, which is cute as heck. and a blossom fused with itself. Why do you have that, Jackson? Anyway, I beat him and move on. My Nidoto finally evolves, and this familiar face is now mine to command. Making my way up through Silphco, this time around it's Lance you're meeting at the top instead of your rival, and the Giovanni fight here is actually against ZapMolCuno instead of at Mount Ember where it normally is. It also only has one head, so there's no need for Rock Slide here. I'm able to take it out pretty easily with some Aqua Tails and Sludge Bombs, and this battle is a lot more anticlimactic than it is in newer versions. I'm glad they changed it. Forgive the Rhymoth fusion over the game, but the Rhyhorn part evolved, breaking the custom sprite, so I fuse Venomoth with Machamp instead, and I get a funny little guy named Mammoth to help against Sabrina's Steel-type Pokemon this time around. Thankfully, I can just reuse my ground focus team from Koga's gym for this. She's got a Hondsharp, which falls to a Boomerang. She has an Aegis, which is also just an amazing looking fusion, which also falls to a Boomerang. Metalax is next, which also looks amazing, who also falls to Boomerang. Finally is Klinkvor, which looks like it's wearing a fedora. Guess what? Boomerang. Marsh badge acquired. Now on Cinnabar, I fuse a Tentacruel I found with a Hypno and get a nice looking Hipcruel. I don't know about the giant tufts of hair though. Anyway, Blaine uses Psychic type Pokemon, the same as he does in normal modern mode runs. I decide to use a bunch of Dark types to counter him. I fuse Arbok with Bisharp to make Bybok, Muck and Absol make Musel, and Ariados with Zoroark make Zodos, which I hope to never see in the night because I'd probably just die right there. Blaine leads Hipret while I set up Toxic Spikes, and I switch into Musel to negate its Zen Headbutt. I set up Swords Dances as Blaine switches into a Corsola Celebi fusion. The rest of the fight goes as any fight does with a fast Pokemon boosted to quadruple attack. Night Slash crit one-shots Corby, Gardeazard, Hipret, and a suspiciously Hatsune Miku-shaped Giovanni. Volcano Badge down. Glad I spent the time to raise Bibok and Zodos, right? Anyway, on to Giovanni and Viridian Gym. He has fighting type Pokemon, which I just realized he shared with Erika. I can see why they were together in the past, I guess. He has a Shuchamp, uncomfortable. Granwrath, uncomfortable. Go-Wrath, this one's kinda cool. S-Champ, okay, this one's actually awesome. And Lucamoth, this one's kinda cute. I knock them all out and earn my Earth Badge. Time to head to the Indigo Plateau. My penultimate battle against Jackson takes place just west of here. He has a cute Celery, which is suspiciously close to celery. I wonder if it tastes similar. He also has an Onmime, which is genuinely frightening, his starter Blastazard, which looks good as always, if a little cliche, Sylphtata, which perplexes me with how weak it is, but I do love its little bow tie and button up, Krayler, which really doesn't put up much of a fight, and Quagligator, which looks like it's just trying its best. I'm free to move on through Victory Road and onto the Elite Four. I decide not to fuse any new Pokemon here before the end because I really like the variety I've already discovered, and many of these team members are actually really good already. I'm going in with Hipcruel, a special attacking Psychic type, Mammoth, a physical attacking, fighting type Flame Orb Guts user, Nidogia, a flying type Expert Belt physical attacker, Musel, a dark type to resist psychic attacks who also has Super Luck and a Scope Lens and Sword Stance, Nidotoys, a bulky water type specializing in special moves, and Togaraid, another special attacking fairy type. Seems like a well-rounded team to me, besides, you know, the common weakness to psychic and ground moves. I'm gonna try something different this time. I'm not gonna give you a play-by-play of the Elite Four fights this time around. If you watched my Steel-type video, you might have noticed I got a little lazy with the editing because I had set a deadline on myself and just got burned out on editing fights by the time I got to that point in the video. I also realized some people might just like seeing the full fights for the most important part of the game, so I'm just gonna slightly speed it up and leave you with some music for the last part of the game here. Lorelei starts us off with Grass-type Pokemon, followed by Bruno with Ice types, then Agatha with Dragon types, and finally Lance with Fire-type Pokemon. I'll talk to you again when I get to Jackson the Champion. We finally made it to Jackson the champion. I've done pretty well so far, don't you think? Well, let's get right to it. I lead Hipcruel again to set up toxic spikes against his Klinkazam, which looks amazing by the way. I set up a nasty plot before realizing Klinkazam resists one of my moves and is immune to the other, so I have no choice but to switch out to Mammoth. Unfortunately, I'm not able to one-shot Klinkazam, and Mammoth runs out of health due to its own burn, as Jackson spams full restores with no honor. I switch in Musel, who's able to take it out with Night Slash. Primaler is next out, and I switch into Dojiat to get the flying versus fighting advantage. This was a good idea since it uses Final Gambit, which would have definitely taken out Musel if it were still in. Golo is sent out next, which is a fusion of Golduck, not Golem, which I thought before the sprite was revealed. Ancient Power finishes off Nidogia, and I bring in Togaraid. I try a few Moonblasts to take it out handily. Jackson sends in Blastazard, and this genius sets up Rain, then uses Inferno. Strongest trainer in the world, huh? Anyway, Togaraid is taken out a couple turns later to Hydro Pump. At least that Rain did something. I send out Nidotoys to also benefit from the Rain, and take it out with Earth Power. Jackson brings in Belleville, which is pretty dang cute. I'm able to take it out with a Flash Cannon and its own confusion damage from Petal Dance. Skepnine is last out, and Nidotoys lives in X-Scissor with 2 HP, allowing me to bring it super low. It takes out Nidotoys next turn, but it also falls to its own poison, giving me the victory over this fat cat Jackson with a team of one of the weakest types in Pokemon. Once again, I'll fuse a bunch of extra Pokemon in my PC while I talk for a second. You might have noticed it took me a whole 3 weeks to get this video out. How's that possible? Well, like I said, I got a new job and that kinda takes priority. I'm sure some people are sick of hearing that by now. Well, to be honest, I also needed a break from Pokemon for a minute. I'm one of those people who will play a rotation of games. I'll play 2 or 3 games at the same time for about a month or 2, then I'll get burned out on those, then move on to 2 or 3 other games, and eventually I'll get back to where I was before. I didn't want to let you guys down though, so I always kept it in my mind so I wouldn't just forget it. I came back around eventually, so I guess it worked out. In any case, I'm still going to be making more videos. Let me know what you think of this one. Do you like how I handled the Elite Four? That was one of the things I was most dreading writing a script for, since it's just so dense. The editing for that part takes forever too. I'm just trying to find a happy middle ground between entertaining content and not making myself resent the process. Anyway, I think it's time for me to head out again. I'm pretty sure the next run is Bug-type, so keep a lookout for that one. I'll see you when I see you. Have a good one.